It's Chainsaw Tuesday! This chapter was absolutely bonkers and features something I thought could never happen, but never dared to suggest seriously. Pochita and Denji have fused together to create a new form. In other words, the continued clowning on Yoru is eternal, and shows that Yoru, even with her ultra-powerful nuclear punch, could not defeat Denji and Pochita. So, let's jump in. If you missed GamerSup's Black Friday deal, then I got you covered. Right now, there is a perfect entry point with their Group Cross Yumi Double Cup, which comes with free samples and is just $25. Every purchase using code CTactics does give me a commission. We pick up directly from 221 right after Yoru lands the nuclear punch. Now, last week, I theorized that Pochita would simply dodge the attack, and many more of you in my Discord and comment section were like, nah, he's just gonna tank it. And you guys were very right for that. It opens directly after the direct nuclear punch hit, with the only surviving part of Asa's body being her head, which then allows her to, in this, disgusting, sickening display, heal her body and even her clothing too, which I thought was like a little bit of a neat detail. And I love that expression where she is just like, yeah, I did that. I am a total badass. And I say it every time, but goddamn, this woman and her insane pulls of misplaced confidence. It makes me giggle. So she lands with an oof, and well, she didn't. I just added that part. And for a moment, I thought this disembodied head was Pochita. Just for a moment, but nah, this is one of her devil minions, and it's just, God, Fujimoto. It is just so Fujimoto to make Yoru apologize here. Imagine he sounds like Skeletor, though.
Yoru, very nice nuclear punch. You're amazing, and it's just, I have no body.
Though I really love this next detail. It reminds me a lot of Jujutsu Kaisen with Yuji Itadori at the end of the Shibuya incident arc, which, by the way, Tatsuki Fujimoto, I don't know if you guys knew this, but he is also the mangaka under the alias of Gege Akutami, which we all know that person does not exist, and I can't wait for people to get mad at me for making a joke and not realizing that it was a joke. No fun. But if we look at Yoru's eyes during this moment, you'll find like a really awesome detail. Her right eye is Yoru's, and her left eye is, well, her eye. They are both witness to the death and destruction the nuclear punch has caused. And goddamn, man, that guy's on fire, a charred couple holding each other, burnt from the waist up, a woman hunched over a rail, another man against the wall with debris piercing his right side, a woman simply impaled by debris, a man hunched over with multiple pieces, one who is still alive crawling to some kind of help as their shirt seems to be charred to their skin and the top of their head. Ugh. If one of your favorite things about Chainsaw Man is all of the death, despair, and depression, then Jesus Christ, you surely got that checked off your list this week. What side of the bed did Fujimoto wake up on? Anyways, I wonder if this is a sneaky commentary on the use of nuclear weapons in the past and just how devastating they are to the people on the ground. I mean, just look at the way their bodies are mangled and burned. You see someone engulfed in flame, another bleeding from their I put mouse here in the script for some, from their mouth due to a stomach wound, with a person in the background just simply hunched over while standing, not even moving. And of course, a man without a shirt and burnt, begging for water. And yeah, I found the way it was presented in this chapter just to be so masterful, with the three split panels as we see like Yoru walk past all of this carnage she created. It is these kinds of details that I think really sell the horror of this moment. I think that whatever Mappa decides to do with this part of Chainsaw Man 25 years from now, they will almost certainly have to censor the series on, I think, network television, if that exists by that point, which is bullshit, but par for the course here. I'm sure Crunchyroll would also butcher it further as well. Hey, they may even just replace the subtitles with JoJo subtitles instead of the real ones. I can't believe people still pay for that service. Anyways, Yoru comes upon the remains of what looks to be Pochita and a woman missing the top part of her skull and bleeding out as she calls for Chainsaw Man. I know this is weird to be reminded of this, but this moment kind of reminds me of Nail and Halloween, aka Cosmos. So I so wish they would both come back, but they're pretty cool, especially Halloween. And here is the moment that made me hate Yoru even more than I already do. She looks at Pochita and begins to cry. And honestly, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, I knew what was coming here. She acknowledges the pain and the suffering that she has caused because of her powers and how they would never be released from the grasp of that pain. And as a man runs by, literally on fire, we see the most disgusting facial from Yoru yet as she says that this was a moment for her, where her dream came true, and the twisted joy, and what even looks to be ecstasy because of, her finger touching her lip, which is a nice but disgusting detail. It is just so easy to hate her. So often in stories, by the way, I gotta bring this up, when it comes to villains, I've tended to notice that there are points in stories where their villain does a lot of bad things, but it isn't until they've done something that just kind of pushes them over the line into that ultimate villain category. That moment where everyone agrees they've taken something too far, even for them. And that seals their fate, and I think this is that moment for Yoru. I think Yoru cannot come back from this, and I think she will be punished dearly for it and gravely. What that looks like, I have no clue, which is funny because I'll theorize about it later in the video. But one thing is for sure, Yoru is about to be mollywopped. So here is another really cool detail I did not notice until someone in my Discord server brought it up, so shout out to October. But the woman missing a part of her skull begs for Chainsaw Man to save them all as she pours blood into his mouth, which leads to Yoru callously kicking her head off of her body. Now, this woman that got her head kicked off may be the same Chainsaw Devil from chapter 159 and later on in 162 when she killed her own husband. Now, I don't think the designs match up 100% here, so I'm not gonna say that it is her, but it does look a lot like her. I say the lady in this chapter, her chin is sharper, her hair is longer, but I mean, who knows? If it is true, then it's still a really cool detail. If not, then we can pretend it's true. Yoru then talks down to Pochita, declaring that she has won because he can no longer move, and thanks to him for giving her one last hurrah. And, also as well to help create a perfect world for her. Her last goal is to send the people into hatred and warfare, and to do that, she is going to turn Denji and Pochita into a weapon, or at least that's a part of it. Because as she puts it, the loser belongs to the winner. Peculiar statement. A bold statement, especially seeing as Yoru should know fiends are pretty much impossible to kill. Either way, she is about to find out because as she goes to give him a new name, Denji's human arm appears out of the charred remnants of Pochita. Through his mouth, almost looking like Guts and the Berserker armor, appears acting like he's bidding in Fallout New Vegas by calling her baby.
What in the goddamn?
He declares that he has won because she played paper and he played scissors, which means she loses and he still belongs to him. So this is so good. So she shouts her name for him, Ultra Chainsaw Machine Gun, which is freaking cool. But Denji breaks the news that she now perceives herself as having lost, which prompts her to fire on him to, make him lose again. And I really like this a lot because it is Denji using Yoru's powers against her as a way to really buy time, but it is really neat. I just wonder how far you could take something like this. I mean, in theory, you could catch Yoru off guard like this multiple times if you're clever. In this sense, I think it shows that Yoru's power isn't nearly as effective as it can seem, and that there is always some sort of plot hole somewhere within her armor, which is cool. I love characters like that with open flaws that are, so simple, it is almost painful. So she finger bangs Denji, which leads to the coolest moment in this arc thus far, or at least one of. I mean, this arc is full of them. Denji says that Pochita's devil powers and his high school educated genius brain have fused together to create the ultimate combination that spells disaster for Yoru. A surefire loss as we get to witness maybe one of the best Berserk references this side of the globe in a while? Maybe? Chainsaw Man is now clad in metal armor with shining eyes and layered metal, with, of course, his starter hanging out of, his chest and his gut scarf keeping his neck nice and warm. Man, this was one hell of a chapter, and I obviously loved it from beginning to end. I just love all of the nice details of the destruction that Yoru has caused. Asa witnessing it too, and then of course the sly and simple-minded thinking that would once again save Denji's ass, and this time actually lead to a big power-up too. Now let's be really real here for a moment. I think it's safe to say that Yoru is just not going to win this fight. It's not happening, and that was apparent from the word go, but now more than ever. This is why I think something is up here, because it doesn't make sense to have Pochita and now Denji decimate Yoru like this and so effortlessly. Every step of the way, they've had an answer for Yoru's attacks, and not once have I personally felt that either of them were going to lose against her. Maybe that's just me. I don't know, but something is really fishy here. Something's up. Is Yoru just going to get shut down like this? It's weird to me, man. It's just kind of weird to me. I'm just saying. On the other hand, I do have some theories coming out of this chapter that I think are kind of interesting. I think that based on the dual perspective of Asa and Yoru that we saw, we have a glimpse of here. Maybe it could be the tipping point that Asa needs to regain control of her body. Because to simply put, I don't see what others do. Asa dying is not on my bingo card, boys. I think it's impossible at this point in the story, and probably always was. So maybe this is that moment where Asa sees the kind of destruction she has caused and begins to stand up to the bratty war devil inside of her head. Because there is nothing more sobering than seeing your people literally on fire and burned to death that makes you go, yeah, enough is enough. This could effectively mitigate damage to the city and the people to stop the fight short and all that stuff, and, we also have to consider that at this point, it really just doesn't make sense for Asa to stand by and let herself be killed either. Like, why would you just let your boyfriend kill you after you got to know him and relate to him like they did? Also remember, this is all because Asa feels she doesn't have the strength to stand up to Yoru and control her. So how do we solve that? Well, I don't know. If we go back to when Asa fought Yoshida, which is, kind of a ways way back in chapter 148 or something, Asa was able to use Yoru's powers for herself to make Room 606 sword and defeat Yoshida. Now, what about this? What about it? What if Asa figures out a way to believe that she owns the War Devil? If that happens, does that not mean that she would have full power over Yoru and would effectively go dormant, or at least, off to the side? This big through line of part 2 is Asa losing control of Yoru and having pretty much no confidence in herself. But, I don't know, maybe someone believing in her, like Denji, and she believing in him may bring about some sort of awesome confidence boost, and thus getting us to a point where she could use Yoru's powers against her. Maybe not. I mean, if it worked with Denji in that little and tiny instance, imagine how it could really work against Yoru when applied on a bigger scale. Plus, there are many more instances of Asa using Yoru's power. I mean, college fund turrets and all that kind of comes to mind immediately. I also did a bit of sleuthing about in some other chapters because I got a bit of an idea going on in my noggin. What is the moment that Asa started to lose control of Yoru? Well, I went back and I peeled over some chapters, and it seems to me that the first instance keep in mind, is that this was the chapter that made the internet lose their goddamned minds. Ever since chapter 167, it seems more and more Asa has given up that autonomy and then leading to the point we have here. It's just odd timing, because before then, we got the Room 606 sword, the college fund turrets, and the jailbreak, which, it gave Asa this huge high. We could see it firsthand. But ever since the incident of 167, she has been giving up more and more autonomy. Then it got me wondering, is it because Asa thinks too much about how others may perceive her? This is a staple of low self-esteem, and through that, it is hard for a person to really own their own life, Because they're constantly living by others' standards. Effectively, it is the other people who own their headspace. So we also know that Asa had a fight with Yoru afterward because she thought Denji would see him as a slut, which, yes, I know some people have issues with that translation, or maybe not. I don't know if it ever got resolved or whatever, but effectively, it means the same thing no matter what word is used. And I guess what I am saying is, if we go back to the source of her losing her autonomy, or that tipping point, maybe there is a way to retrace those steps back. I don't know how that would be achieved, because even if Denji says something like, "No, Asa, it's no big. You didn't do anything wrong. It was Yoru that did it." Well, that doesn't mean much if the other half of the party still blames themselves, right? So it's an interesting thought. I may be overthinking it to some degree. Can't wait to be yelled at by angry people for it. So let's go to my new favorite part of the week. I asked those in my Discord server to participate in a simple poll, and we got some nice responses through this poll. October noticed what I noticed, but October was actually kind of fooled by Yoru crying at first. To me, I'm at a point with Yoru that I've analyzed her character from front to back many times over and then some. And what I've observed is that Yoru is a particularly cruel one in part 2 and even part 1, if we're comparing them. She's much more innocent. She's much more like a child, which explains her moments of temper tantrums and the like throughout the series. And this chapter showed off a lot of that brattiness where she thinks the world revolves around her. But like any bratty child, once you're able to get through to them and make them understand that they are wrong, then their world kind of comes tumbling down. So that is something to keep an eye on for sure, something I noticed. We also got a couple of comments commending it for its kind of randomness, which is true. I think this chapter starts with that disembodied head with some comedic relief, followed by true suffering, and then ending with Denji saying, "Yoru, baby." It had a couple of those Fujimoto hallmarks, to say the least. But what I found most interesting is it seems people are more and more opening up to this idea of a happy ending. Maybe I'm getting through to someone. I personally thought this would happen no matter what pretty early on in part 2, because this story is trying to convey the idea of gaining back control in life and finding your place within the world after being ripped out of it. So for Denji, it was, family being ripped away, same for Asa, but we can see it in other places like with Quan Chi. And I think that Fujimoto has set up from the start that our characters kind of have to find their happiness, or at least this baseline, by the end. Because otherwise, having a depressing ending just to do it really doesn't sit well with people. People want to be happy. I really don't get this odd trend of people wanting their series to end with everyone dying, trying to tell the reader or viewer to just give up and give it. To me, this doesn't make sense, and it just doesn't at all make it a human story. It just kind of ignores all of, the other realities of the world we live in that we have to accept just as much as the depressing ones. I don't know, it feels very immature to not have that kind of balance. And this is, I don't know. That's just me. I'm sure I'll get hate for being a happy person though. President Shimem, who is somehow the president of my server, brings up a good point. In part 3, this evolved form it will play a titular role. Which I think so. By the end of this arc, we may now see Yoru fuse with Asa, which, hey, could also be where this is bound to head anyways. This is a classic trope in shonen where you have that big power-up at that big climactic moment. Easiest example is Super Saiyan in Dragon Ball Z, or every morning when I drink too much coffee and evolve into a different being altogether, a stronger, much more powerful being that cannot focus for the life of me. But overall, we had 9 votes during the writing of this script, and 7 voted peak, so that's a good sign. 1 voted good, and 1 voted okay, which is, that's sort of par for the course. Despite me being positive about Chainsaw Man and having a non-negative emotion, there is always going to be someone out there who hates anything that happens in this series, but reads it every single week despite that. You'd think he'd stop reading by now. Anyways. That damned bi-weekly devil has returned, and so the next chapter is on the 16th. So join my Discord, comment a pair of hearts to let me know you made it to the end. Click here for even more Chainsaw Man goodness. Make it a great day or not, the choice is yours.